Today we visit a garden that boasts unbelievable biodiversity and gives us a look into what we can do to make our spaces a haven for wildlife. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned as we garden smart.
These moments of beauty and relaxation are brought to you by Proven Winners Flowering Shrubs. Our goal is to leave you free to just enjoy your garden. Proven Winners Flowering Shrubs can be found at local garden centers across the country.
Power Planter's garden drill augers are designed to help you tackle the digging jobs in your garden or yard. Dig through hard soil to assist in planting trees, shrubs, and annuals. Power Planter's heavy-duty augers, made for professional landscapers and home gardeners alike.
DRAM has been providing gardeners with professional equipment for over 80 years. DRAM products feature 9 water patterns and are designed to nurture your plants with a shower of rain. DRAM for lawn and garden, available at garden centers near you.
The Jaguar F-Pace.
Highlands, North Carolina is a beautiful town located a short 120 miles from bustling Atlanta and just a stone's throw from Asheville. In the past decades, it's gone from a sleepy mountain town to a vibrant vacation destination. It's prized for its amazing views and many attractions, as well as a haven for those seeking health and wellness retreats. The town sits at around 4,000 foot elevation and has a unique rainforest-like ecosystem due to incredibly high rainfall. All of these factors converge to make it a perfect place for gardening. And today we visit Sonia Carpenter at the Highlands Biological Center. Sonia has an infectious passion for the natural world and is passionate about sharing that love with all she encounters. As a garden designer, she's taken that passion to the next level, building gardens that exist in balance with the natural world and demonstrates how that harmony brings true sustainability to our green spaces. Sonia, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for coming.
This is an amazing place. Every time I meet someone who has a super interesting job, I'm always curious as to how you landed this.
That's a great question. So I studied ecology at the University of Florida, and then about 20 years ago, my husband and I moved here. And the very first time he brought me here, he had come here a lot as a child. He brought me here, and I just knew that this was a place where I wanted to be. And after studying ecology at University of Florida, I worked in ornamental horticulture for many years. And so we started taking programs here at the biological station, and then I got recruited to become the director of their biological foundation, which is the nonprofit organization that supports the station. So I did that for about 9 years, and we grew and grew, and then I stepped down from that position so that I could work on this new pollinator garden here at the biological station.
Wow. Well, your work is amazing. This place is beautiful. Mm-hmm. And this little corner of paradise, it's a beautiful, unique ecosystem, if you will. It's a temperate rainforest, right?
It is, absolutely. We have high annual rainfall. Our average is about 84 inches of rain, and it falls throughout the season. So we don't have a dry season. And this really helps to nurture our biodiversity that we have here. The Southern Appalachian Mountains, which is where we're located, is really known for its biological diversity, and Highlands is certainly no different. So we have northern species and southern species that combine here in our forest ecosystem and nurture great biodiversity.
Well, I know there's so much to see here, and I cannot wait to see it. Let's go take a tour.
Great, let's go.
So the Highlands Biological Station has been here for almost a century, and it's got a really rich history. Let's talk a little bit about its mission and, well, some of its history.
So the mission here is to promote research and education focused on the natural history of the Highlands Plateau. And of course, biological field stations are located in biologically interesting places, which is why it was founded here by a group of residents who were interested in teaching and celebrating and promoting the richness of our biodiversity here.
It's gone through quite an evolution. I want you to talk about what it is today and kind of how it's evolved over the years.
Yeah, so today it is a multi-campus center of Western Carolina University, but really our mission remains the same. We promote our mission through education here at the station and the 3 different facets of the biological station. The first facet is the biological teaching laboratory, where students come from all over the country to take academically accredited courses, either 1-week or 2-week courses in the biological sciences. And these courses are a little different than what you might find at the university because students spend most of their time in the field, which is really important for young students. Instead of just being in the classroom all the time, they get to go see their organisms in their natural environment. We also have researchers who come here from all over the place, and they will come to the Highlands Plateau and do their research, and that really contributes to our understanding and knowledge about this environment.
There's so much to learn. I think the laboratory aspect of it is really fascinating because the more we understand about different ecosystems in our environment, the better prepared we are, to manage and maintain, especially areas that are in crisis.
Absolutely. So we see the work that we do here as, training the next generation of scientists, because we're really going to need boots on the ground to fully understand the impacts of climate change moving forward. That brings us to sort of the second facet of the biological station, which is our Nature Center, which the doors of the Nature Center are open to the community, and we teach a wide variety of different classes and programs there. Everything from little kids in their Nature Center programs and summer camps to adults, where we have a weekly conservation lecture series that happens throughout the summer to increase science literacy.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
It's fun.
All right, and what's the third, Sonia?
The third facet is the botanical garden. We have a 26-acre botanical garden here that's a little bit different. So it was established in 1962, and it's a living laboratory and repository for over 450 different species of native plants. So it's a great place for people to come and learn about the value of native plants. And our garden's set up a little bit differently because it's sort of a garden of gardens. So we have a bog garden and a moss garden, and we display these plants according to the communities that they grow in the natural world. So you might find an area where you walk through a rich cove community or an acid cove community here, and it helps you kind of understand a little bit better about how these plants interact with each other.
Absolutely. For me as a gardener, I love going and visiting other people's gardens, and especially ones that are arranged by geographic and soil type. So that if I've got an area like that in my own garden, say a boggy area, and I've had challenges with other plants that are not really well designed to grow in that space, I can come to the biological station and look at okay, I've got these kind of environments in my own yard or garden, and these plants are thriving there. And so I think as gardeners and horticulturalists, it also helps us make better decisions for our own plantings.
Absolutely.
Sonia, Pollinator Garden is a garden after my own heart. It's just teeming with life, diversity, all of these amazing colors and textures, and it almost feels a bit like a cottage garden meshed with a prairie. And there's so much interest here. I want you to talk about the design of this garden and kind of the space that it encompasses.
Yeah, absolutely. So the garden was designed and installed thanks to generous gifts from our local community, and it's managed by the Highlands Biological Foundation, but then it was gifted back to the community and to the biological station. And back in 2019, we installed over 10,000 native plants, shrubs, trees, and 30 different species of perennial wildflowers into this garden. And since that time, the garden has grown and developed and turned into this beautiful blooming place that we see now. But in addition to the plants, we have thousands of other species that have come here, pollinating insects such as these bees and things like hoverflies and butterflies and beetles. But there are countless other species that now inhabit this garden.
This garden has a really dynamic sense of motion with all of these insects buzzing around, and you can see the evidence of so many other critters that the garden itself has invited to become part of its landscape,
Right.
if you will. And it adds so much more interest being able to connect nature to the people that visit the garden, and that's why I think that these species are so important, and looking at how we support the pollinating community. But I think also as a visitor, it's amazing, like just all the different sights and sounds that go well beyond the plants.
Absolutely. And what we really are beginning to understand is it's the interactions between all of these different species that make a healthy ecosystem dynamic.
Absolutely.
So we're so excited when we have visitors come through here. Every day we have people walking through with dogs on leashes, or families spending quiet time together, or campers and students that come here. And we feel like this garden is a really great teaching opportunity to show that native plants are not just beautiful individually, but can be used in a well-designed garden that supports not just the plants, but all of these other species, including the insects, but also birds and
Right.
bats and mammals and reptiles and amphibians. Like, it's just teeming with life, all different kinds of life.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the maintenance of a pollinator or a native garden. I would say that from the outset, someone might think that this is going to be a super labor-intensive endeavor, but actually they're not.
No, it's not so bad, actually, and I help maintain this garden myself, so I know a little bit about it. And, it's all about picking the right plants for the right area. And if you select your plants carefully, the maintenance actually turns out to be relatively easy. We don't use a lot of mulches here because the plants provide the mulch. We don't use a lot of insecticides here because it's just not necessary. We want to encourage our pollinators. And really, most of the weeds that I have coming up in this garden now are native plants that are just seeding in because they're so happy in their environment.
Right, and once you get a good cover, across the soil, the weed, they're opportunists.
Yes.
And so they're looking for an open patch of land. So in time, if the right species are attended to and they begin reseeding, and as you said, you get a type of colonization of the plants that you want. And once the soil is covered, very, very little weeding, very little maintenance.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mentioned that 10,000 plants were put into this
That's a
garden.
lot.
Yeah, and density is important.
Right.
So if you plant your plants fairly close together, it allows them to knit together in the landscape fairly quickly, and that will minimize your weeding needs.
Sonia, this garden really does underscore how beautiful these native plantings can be. And of course, as we've seen already, just the incredible diversity of wildlife. There's butterflies and bees and everything humming around us. This was also a pretty challenging site. And so, you were able to do something really amazing.
Well, thank you. This particular garden serves a really important part of our network of habitat gardens because of its location, in part. So we are on the campus of our former hospital here in Highlands, and it now serves as a hub for many small businesses and local nonprofit organizations. So this area gets a lot of visitation. It's also about a block away from our local kindergarten through 12th grade public school. So every day this garden is seen by students and parents and all of the visitors that come to the Peggy Crosby Center. So we really like its visibility. But the visibility used to be a problem. So once upon a time, this was an eroding slope that was really kind of an eyesore for the building. And my husband, Canty Worley, worked in partnership with the administrators of the building and a local garden club to start to create a garden here. And it started slowly, but then grew and grew and grew into this beautiful and diverse garden.
Yeah, it's amazing. Great job.
Thank you.
Sonia, this border really underscores how versatile a pollinator garden can be. This is an area that, clearly does not have an enormous budget to maintain, something that's super manicured. And so this garden kind of does its own thing, right?
Absolutely, it sure does. So here in Highlands, we have a different kind of greenway. Most greenways might connect, go run along a river, but ours is a collection of trails and roadways that connect our neighborhoods and significant areas within our community. And this garden is supposed to be a cue that this is a trailhead for our greenway. So it's a little visual way to show people, hey, come here and join our greenway. And it's planted on town property. So
Nice.
we installed this garden in 2020 by a group of masked volunteers. And so all of those volunteers that helped to install this garden have a stake in how it looks. And they're invested in this garden, which we think is really wonderful. And our hope for the future is that we can expand this garden to make it more impactful, but also to include more sort of pocket gardens along the trail, both as a cue to our hikers that the native plants lead the way on the trail, but also to serve as a wildlife corridor of sorts so that animals and insects can follow the trail just like the humans do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's what keeps those pollinators around in the community, is having these little pockets of food and nectar and habitat.
Absolutely. The habitat is a very important part of a pollinator garden. It's something that's often overlooked.
Sonia, it's been so exciting to see your work with pollinator gardens, and they're really beautiful. And you've I think, really shown us that, not only is there this wonderful utility and function that they serve, but that from a gardening standpoint, they can be really, really wonderful plantings.
Absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit about why pollinators are important. So there's more behind this madness, if you will, than just attracting insects and things to the garden, that's wonderful and important.
Mm-hmm.
But pollinators and all of these insects, they're so important just to the survival of humanity.
You're right, absolutely. Pollination is responsible for many of the foods that we eat, and it's absolutely instrumental to life on this planet. So roughly 150 million years ago, plants developed a beneficial relationship with insects. And in exchange for colorful flowers that provide pollen and sweet nectar, insects, in return, will help pollinate the ovary within the flower and provide seeds for the next generation of plants. So without that pollination, we won't have new plants, new flowering plants on our planet, and many of the foods that we eat would just simply cease to exist.
Right, and we think about the fact that the lion's share of what we find in the grocery store is the product of pollination. Mm-hmm. And so if that plant's not pollinated, it does not produce fruit.
Absolutely.
And so, humans would starve if we didn't have the pollinators. It's why creating these habitats for the pollinators is so important, and we need to be thinking about it. It's something that literally affects everyone.
Absolutely, and honeybees get a lot of attention because they do a lot of the pollination for our crops. But we have over 4,000 species of native bees in North America, and they're equally important and deserve just as much attention and conservation as the honeybees do.
Absolutely, yeah. It is absolutely a human issue, and I think that's why, for us as gardeners, we can play this small role in just giving them the habitat and the food to eat, and hopefully help build these populations back up.
Absolutely.
So when you're building a pollinator garden, it's not super tricky, or even just converting some little corners of our garden into a pollinator area. It's pretty simple, but there are a few things that we ought to keep in mind just to ensure our success. What should we think of?
Okay, great question. So I think I can narrow it down to 4 important components. And the first one is to make sure that you have native plants blooming in your garden in a succession throughout the growing season. So you need to look around and see what the first native plants are to bloom in your area, and get those in your garden, and then layer in additional plants so that something is blooming all throughout the growing season. And that's going to ensure that you have enough pollen and nectar to feed your pollinators throughout that important growing season.
Excellent. Yeah, that's super important. So part of it is just creating the habitat that encourages the insects.
Absolutely. And then the second component is you got to make sure you're paying attention to host plants.
Right.
So those are the plants that are going to feed your baby caterpillars, right? So all the babies need to eat something too. And so feeding caterpillars means providing host plants for your caterpillars to eat and grow from. And one thing that's important and often hard for people to accept is that you really need to see things eating your plants. And not
Gotcha.
everybody likes that, right? So, but it is said that if nothing is eating your garden, then it's not really a part of the ecosystem.
Right.
So we need to make sure that we're feeding the babies. And the National Wildlife Federation has come up with an excellent online tool to determine what the best host plants are according to your zip code. So if you use that website, then it'll cue you in to what the best plants are for your garden.
That's a great resource.
It really is. It's a wonderful resource. And then the third component is you need to make sure you're paying attention to what's happening with your pollinators over the winter time. It's a time that we don't always think about, but pollinators are going to overwinter in your garden. And many of our native bees are solitary, so they don't have hives that they go back to, but they lay their eggs either in the ground or in the hollow stems of your plants in the garden. So you want to make sure that you leave your stems at least 12 inches long, because that's probably where a lot of the larvae and the eggs for your next generation of pollinators will be for next year. And it's also important to remember that bumblebee queens often overwinter under rotten logs in your garden. So it's a good idea to leave some branches or an old rotten log that's laying around in your garden so that they can find a safe place to be over the winter time.
You know, mulching is great in certain scenarios, but as we think of a pollinator garden, we're trying to encourage the widest diversity of species. And of course, mulch keeps a lot of these seeds from germinating. So it's a little bit of a different perspective when we think about how we're going to garden.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, all of that material that grew from your garden is gold for your garden. It provides nutrients, and often pollinators look like dead leaves. So if you're raking up and taking all the dead leaves away, you're probably robbing your garden of some pollinators that you would like to see next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, another thing too that we got to think about is what we're doing with chemicals, if any, in our garden, because if the goal is to keep these insects as happy and healthy as possible, there are very few things that we can spray on the plants that's actually in their best interest.
Absolutely. So if you want the insects to be eating your plants and you want the pollinators around, it doesn't serve you very well to spray them with insecticides. And often insecticides are indiscriminate in the insects that they kill. So it's important to be careful about the chemicals that you put into your garden. And when you're doing a pollinator garden, it's not so much about the space, it's about this concept of you're growing both for the plants, but also for all of the other species that utilize your garden. And for me, that's what makes it exciting. I've been a gardener my whole life and I love plants, but now I garden for all of the other things that come to my garden, the pollinators and the birds and even bats and sometimes snakes, but any of these other species that share this beautiful planet with us, I'm gardening for all of them now, and it's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, Sonia, thank you so much for spending the day with us. We've learned so much from you, and what an amazing place this is.
Well, thanks for coming, Eric. It's been my pleasure.
Each week we travel the country north to south, east to west, visiting some of the most exciting gardens, as well as talking to industry horticulturalists about design principles, new plants, and also how you can be most successful with your home gardens. We also love answering your gardening questions, so visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com.
These moments of beauty and relaxation are brought to you by Proven Winners Flowering Shrubs. Our goal is to leave you free to just enjoy your garden. Proven Winners Flowering Shrubs can be found at local garden centers across the country.
Power Planters garden drill augers are designed to help you tackle the digging jobs in your garden or yard. Dig through hard soil to assist in planting trees, shrubs, and annuals. Power Planters heavy-duty augers, made for professional landscapers and home gardeners alike.
DRAM has been providing gardeners with professional equipment for over 80 years. DRAM products feature 9 water patterns and are designed to nurture your plants with a shower of rain. DRAM for lawn and garden, available at garden centers near you.
The Jaguar F-Pace.
It's wonderful to learn how even small changes that we make to the way we garden can have a huge impact on our surrounding ecosystem, and to see that there are tangible decisions that we can make to improve the diversity of our community. If you have questions about anything you've seen today, visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. And remember, even if you're a master gardener, there's always more to learn. So join us next week for more great gardening tips and ideas as we garden smart.